Welcome. I'm Patty Seybold, the chairperson of the African Food and Peace Foundation. Today, my friend Doug Lockwood and I want to tell you a few stories about our visit in November 2024 to our partner organization in Uganda. First, a bit of context. I wanted to just orient folks with where Uganda is. Now we're in Uganda and we're at the western edge, right near Lake Albert and also right near the Republic of Congo. It's a beautiful, bucolic area of the country. So the typical household in this part of the Uganda looks like this. It's a mud hut with a thatched roof and actually pretty happy people living there. Doug can attest to that.
Yeah, it's the thing I noticed most of all, especially with the primary schools. When school was out, we were there for almost 2 weeks. I never saw two kids argue. I never saw any kind of pushing or shoving. I saw kids holding hands or arms around each other, laughing and walking home or wherever they were going. They were just happy, incredible people. It
Yeah.
was just amazing to watch.
And the adults are similar. I mean, even though they live in this, what we would think of an impoverished area, third world country, they are so happy, smiling, warm, welcoming, hardworking, just incredible people to be around. So the story of this project is really to answer these questions. How does one empower girls and women in Uganda and the rest of Africa? And how do you actually empower thousands of people to raise themselves up out of poverty? And why are these people in this part of the country wanting to stay there rather than to move to Kampala or some other congested, noisy, polluted city? And of course, it's because it's congested, noisy, and polluted, but it's also traditionally where people went because that's where they thought the jobs were. So what we want to talk about by telling stories here is really what the secret is of this incredible ecosystem. The structure is amazing of what they've created, and it actually extends through 20 districts in Uganda at this point in time. And we're going to do it just by telling stories of what we've been, what we saw, what we've been doing. So this is just a little preamble. The answer to that question is how you do it is you educate girls and women, and as a byproduct of it, the men that are in their lives to create the lives they want and teach others to do the same. The founders and influencers of this project are Mulama Musheshe, who is Tatra's dad, Ephraim Boba, and Silvana Franco Veldkamp, who actually passed away last year about this time. And then this other woman over here is Alida Bakema Boone, who's Dutch and has been living with her husband in rural Uganda for quite some time. And she was one of the co-founders of the girls' school that you're going to hear about. And Doug will be talking about that in just a sec. So they started in 1987. AFPF, our organization, was founded before that by Silvana, who went and found Musheshe and Ephraim because she and her husband wanted to figure out how to do grassroots development in Africa. They'd spent their entire careers working with the UN, doing top-down Western experts coming to tell Africans how to do things and then leaving them behind without really knowing how they were going to maintain what they'd put into place. And they knew that didn't work. So they wanted, in their retirement, to come up with a better approach. So they basically self-funded this African Food and Peace Foundation, which started in the early 80s and has been going ever since. And over here on the right is Robert Fritz. He is on our board. He's also was very influential for Savannah because he invented a course on how to create both musical and artistic compositions and movies and so on, but also how to create the life that you want to lead. And Savannah looked at that and she's thought that would be a really good basis for how we could structure an educational institution. So that's what she did. So the key components, the whole organization uses the creative process that Robert Fritz elucidated as the key to development. So everybody, so every morning at the campus, there's a 1 hour course called the foundation course from, 8:15 to 8:45 every morning. And everybody goes, from the janitor to the, cooks to the faculty to the students, et cetera. And they talk about what's going on locally, what's going on at the schools, what's going on in their world, but they all do it from this standpoint of how are people creating what they want, and what's the structure, what's the systems thinking structure of why that's working. And so everybody is educated with this idea that you hold a vision, you create a vision for what you want to accomplish, and then you notice what your current reality is, and you, instead of getting anxious about the fact that you're nowhere near there or that something just happened to blow you out of the water, you hold that tension as what they call structural tension rather than psychological tension. And everybody gets really good at it. So that's the premise that everything is built on. And then what's really unique about this organization is not only are they focusing on women, but they're focusing on kids. So kids have become the change agents, starting at the age of 10. Mostly girls, some boys are taught this approach, but they're also taught all kinds of things, as you'll see very shortly. And in a tradition that is a culture that is very, I wouldn't say male dominated, because women do all the work and maintain the families, but as an example of the gender equality, the need for, better gender equality, this particular area of Uganda is traditionally polygamous. So a lot of the men have multiple families, women and children in different villages. And basically the women do the farming, and then the fathers come and take whatever the money, the produce is, take it to market, and that is how they earn a living. So, changing that so that everybody sits together, plans together, respects each other, begins to treat each other as equals, that's been a huge cultural change that this organization has managed to do in this part of the world. And then the agriculture they do it's a very agricultural region, and Musheshe is an agricultural specialist. And so they do mostly organic farming, and they have a huge demonstration farm on the campus, on the 80-acre campus. And their goal is to help people in rural communities stay there. So as Doug said, people are cheerful and happy, and, they may be living on dirt roads and in, what we would consider to be poverty, but they're really happy. Do you want to talk about the stores?
Sure. One of the things I notice mostly, I'm going, driving through the countryside, is seems like every time you came to a hilltop, you had to go over 3 or 4 speed bumps to slow down. When you got to the top of the hill, there were these stores on both sides of the hill, and they weren't department stores. Well, I suppose they were departments, but they were individual stores that sold individual things. And one store would be selling fruit, another store would be selling vegetables, another store would be a market, one store would be selling beds, another store would be selling mattresses, doors, windows, whatever. Every store had its own specialty, and there was always a motorcycle repair place on either side of the road. And this is the kind of buildings that they had. And you notice the bricks in front of this building. That's what they sold, bricks. They
Right.
made their own bricks, and most of the people made their own bricks to do their own building.
So, as I mentioned, this is an over 80-acre campus in Kigati, which houses the Uganda Rural Development and Training Program, the URDT Vocational Institute, and the African Rural University. The first thing I wanted to mention is that Silvana, whom you saw as one of the founders, she built a hut on campus, and there I am in front of the hut. It's big, as you can see. It has 2 double bedrooms, 2 baths, 2 kitchens, and a big living area. And this is available for anyone who goes, as part of AFPF, the African Food and Peace Foundation, because Silvana paid for it and built it there and donated it to the campus when she passed away. And we are treated so well as visitors there. I mean, and I would really encourage any of you to think about traveling there or going back to visit if you've been there a while ago. You get picked up at the airport. There are professional drivers who drive you around. You're always escorted wherever we're going out into the boondocks with very knowledgeable people who explain everything and can translate for you. And they feed you beautifully with wonderful organic food. And there's really nothing that you want for. You want to tell the story about the plumbing problem we had?
Well, not just the plumbing, but the electricity goes on and off too, and they have to start generators. But the plumbing problem was turn on the faucets, nothing was coming out. It's like, okay, no tea this morning, no coffee this morning, whatever. So who did we?
Enoch.
Enoch, that's
Yeah.
right. And so, told him what the problem was, and within a few minutes, the plumber came with with a her plumbing wrench, a woman, and within 2 minutes or less, I don't know, it didn't take very long. She said, all fixed,
Mm.
and we had running water. So that was a real eye opener. And
Also, the fact that she was a woman and she
yeah,
had been
exactly.
trained at the Vocational Institute right
Yep.
there on campus.
Knew exactly what to do.
Right. So for those of you who have been there before or know a lot about the campus and the Uganda Rural Development and Training Organization, you know that what used to dominate the campus was 300 some young girls from the ages of 10 to 18 who ran around the campus and studied at the girls' school, which was the biggest institution on the campus. And the thing that was different for me and for all of us is that because the university is now on the same campus and the university is trying to get its charter from the National Council of Higher Education, even though we've been operating since 2006, we have a provisional charter, not a final charter as a university. The National Council for Higher Education made it clear that they wanted more of a infrastructure for the university. So what the URDT board decided was to move the girls' schools off the campus to 2 other schools that they also owned. They owned 2 other community schools, and to turn all of the girls' school infrastructure over to the university. So now this is what used to be the girls' school multipurpose building is now the university multipurpose building. And the faculty offices are also in the school buildings. And I think this is a really nice, innovative thing. Those of you who visited on campus probably remember these guest huts. Although when I was last there were maybe 2 or 3 of them. Now there's about 15 or 20. And this is where the faculty is now housed, because they had a lot of trouble finding decent housing for faculty. And so when you visit, if you don't get to stay in Silvana's hut, you would stay in one of these huts, where they also have common food dining hall for all of the visiting dignitaries as well as the faculty. So I'm going to let Doug talk about his visits to the girls' school. I just wanted to, point out that these schools are unique in that they offer the standard Ugandan curriculum in English, as well as now Swahili, but they also include organic farming and other technologies, as well as you'll hear, back home projects. And the girls go out into the countryside, into the villages, and perform dances. And they also appear on the radio in order to educate people in the communities about things like gender equality and domestic violence and HIV prevention and so on. So Doug.
Well, the first thing I got there, you want to do the video of the kids were ready for me. I met the head teacher, which would, in our country would be the principal of the school. And the kids were all gathered around. They all welcomed me with clapping, and then they did this. The first thing they did after the dancing, a group of students and the head teacher and the principal took me on a tour, and you notice that they have organic gardens everywhere. I mean, the kids, grow their own crops and raise their own animals, and it was pretty amazing. The thing I noticed, though, that when I visited the classrooms, how Spartan it was, that all there are wooden tables and wooden chairs, and they're very old. The chalkboard, it reminded me of a chalkboard when I was a kid. That was a long time ago, in my elementary school in St. Joe, Michigan, where the chalkboard had been used so many times that it was hard to erase the chalk off from it even. This is an example of an herb garden that, so you'd see these not only at the primary school, the secondary school, and also huge organic gardens at the university. It was really amazing how much the kids had done. Here's a picture of what the kids are involved with. The girls this is the 10 to 13-year-olds in the primary school. This is involved with their back home project. What they do is they draw what their current situation is, and then they decide what they want, what the vision is. Well, it isn't just the girls having the vision, it's the girl going home to her family. And there's only one girl from each of these small villages who actually go to the school. So she's the only one in the school from that particular village. So the first thing they did was have me get in the car with this young girl, or the truck, and we went to her house, and her mother greeted us, and her mother was incredibly proud of her daughter going to school. She just beamed, and she was so pleased that I was there with her teacher and the head teacher. And her home project, and she'd only been there for 1 year. This woman her mom has 9 children, and what they did was, and her husband is passed away, so she's a single mom with 9 kids. And what they had to do that first year, their vision was to clear the land, 1 acre, clear the land, till the land, harrow the land, plant the land with banana trees. They wanted more of a banana plantation in order to make enough money. Well, the first year, the crop that they got from their bananas paid the equivalent of about $1,000. They used the money to send her other 8 siblings to school, to pay their tuition to go to primary school, for the youngest kids. And they're also working on, they made their own kiln. They're working on making their own bricks to build their own house. So their vision is to have a bigger house, to use the house they have as only their kitchen, to have clean water, sanitation, and all the things that we take for granted. And like I said, these people are incredibly productive. They have such an I can attitude, and they're so incredibly happy and being successful what they do. Well, the whole idea then is, by the time they finish the senior high, they become leaders in their village, and they just don't do something for their own home. They help the whole village to realize, the kind of vision that they want for the whole village. And we've seen villages that have incredible vision, that have built their own clinics and so forth, and become much more self-sufficient. So the kids are staying there. They're staying there because that's what, they're providing the work and the jobs and everything for them to do. Now, the next school I went to was a secondary school. Patty was with me. We got there. They were having a competition that day. So we walked around first with Robert to just look at the campus. So we missed the first couple of things in the competition. I'll talk about that later. But they raised pigs. They had a piggery, and each stall they had pigs. It was absolutely no odor at all. They
call them indigenous microorganisms that they mix with the sawdust, which means that these pigs are extremely clean and unsmelly, and presumably much healthier. So that's really an innovation that I'd never seen before. And then
the other thing they had was a fish farm. They had this huge area that they had built and lined with plastic, filled it with water, and they raised their own tilapia. And they've got their own fish farm, which provides the food. We're eating tilapia, probably 2 days a week at least.
Right.
Chicken, tilapia, goat, pig, whatever.
Yeah.
Here are the girls that are getting ready to go into the multi-purpose room for the entertainment for the day. Like I said, they had already begun the entertainment. It was an all-day competition. They had 5 categories. There was poetry and then comedy, which we missed. I wish we hadn't. Then they went into traditional dance. Then they did in creative dance that told a story. And then they went into a holiday song and dancing and doing a very, Christmas theme, Christmas songs and so forth, and wishing us a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, which was really very enjoyable. because of the costuming was limited, there was about a 15-minute break between playing some, I don't know, more rock and roll kind of things. And Patty and I were sitting in the front. And I looked at her and I said, "Hey, you want to dance?" And she goes, "Yeah, of course." So we got out in front and the kids absolutely loved it. We were out there just flailing away and just dancing and having the best time.
And the
And
kids joined us.
oh my gosh, we
Yeah.
had the kids, some of the kids came up to join and danced with us, but the other kids stood up and just clapped and they just were so thrilled that we were, I don't know,
Dancing with them.
yeah, dancing with them and,
Yeah.
you know, felt like doing that. So when the competition was all over, senior, each part of the competition, they had two judges, and this was all day long. And whoever won that particular competition, they scored everyone, you know, there were senior one, senior two, senior three, senior four, senior five was on a field trip or something. They were gone. So it was just the four senior classes. And whoever won each of the competitions, the rest of the group was so excited for him, stood up and applauded. And, you know, just there was no angst at all about, you know, I should have won or, you know, any of that going on at all. So at the end, it was senior four who had actually won the competition. And the winning prize,
So you were going to talk about what the prize
yeah,
was,
the prize was a live goat.
right?
And the kids were so thrilled with that. The whole group of them, the whole senior 4-3 class, picked the goat up over their heads and danced around, and the whole place just erupted with music and dance, and everybody was dancing in place. It was just absolutely amazing.
Let's just talk a little bit about kind of what you learned from the being at the schools, Doug.
Well, the one thing that I learned that really struck me was the fact that the primary school needs a multi-purpose room at a cost of what, about
About
$15,000.
15,000. Yeah.
Um, so that they can do this sort of competition, they can get together and, you know, they all have school songs.
When I toured the university campus with the other university council members in November, we couldn't go to the auditorium of this multipurpose building because it was being used for exams for the primary 6 students. So we're asking you now to help raise the $15,000 needed to construct this building for the primary school before the next class needs to take their exams, since it's legally required for them to sit their exams on the same campus at which they studied. So these girls, once they've graduated from the girls' school, the career path or the education path is many of them choose to go to the African Rural University, which is now, as you heard, on the main campus. And the curriculum, well, first of all, how people find out about it is kind of mysterious. We have the class sizes are small. There are 30 students a year. And yet it's been hard since 2006 was the first year we were open as a university. It's been difficult to find and recruit these women, but when we find them, they are typically from rural villages. They hear about it. They hear about the university on the radio. And most recently, what I discovered, I actually interviewed every one of the new students who joined ARU this September, and as well as the ones who'd been there for a couple of years since I was last there. And I asked, one of the questions I asked them was, how did you hear about the university? Well, it turns out that the alumna are actually the best ambassadors. When they formed their alumni association, I presented at I was there at the launch of their alumni association, and I asked all of the graduates to make it a point to recruit like-minded women, young women in their villages and areas, communities, and they did. And so almost all of the people who are applying now were referred by either an alumna or a village elder in a village that has been impacted by the work of URDT, or the girls' school, or the university. Sometimes it's the mayor of the town. Sometimes it's the parents of a girl who went to the girls' school. So that's actually working, really word of mouth referrals, basically. And so that means that most of the women who join the university are there because they realize that they're being trained to be rural transformation specialists. So the education there are two courses. One is a Bachelor of Arts in Rural Transformation, and the other is a Bachelor of Science in Sustainable Agriculture. And in fact, Doug and I went to one of the classes. You want to talk about what the class was about?
It was artificial insemination of cows.
Right.
And that they were there to learn. They were very respectful, very quiet, though they were willing to share, whatever they were thinking. But it was done very respectfully. And I really enjoyed that part very much.
Yeah. So what's also unique about this curriculum is that they spend 60% of their time doing traditional classroom education, and 40% of their time out in the field, living and working in the communities they're going to be serving when they graduate. And they actually live with families of girls' school students. So each of the students at the university is welcomed by a current or past girls' school student's family into a community that family then introduces them to everybody else in the community, and they also work with the local people in the local government. And what they do is they help the villagers decide what the village needs. And sometimes it's a road, and they get everybody organized to go build a road, or it's a school building, or it's a health clinic, or it's a marketplace, or it's a savings and loan association. They learn how to do all of those things as part of their education, and then they practice it. We went to the graduation of the university, and what was unique about it was, again, the celebratory nature of it. The graduates not only went up to get their diplomas, but they danced up to get their diplomas in a conga line, and their parents and families followed them. So the graduates are extremely happy, and education is so important in Uganda.
Yes.
And it's really just, everybody's so impressed when somebody graduates from school.
I think
Yeah.
if in my observation, I think the dads were the most proud.
Yeah.
They were just beaming, whether they were dancing or sitting in the audience. They were just beside themselves. It was great.
Right. So once they graduate, another unique innovation is that URDT will hire as many of the graduates as it can afford to. And everyone that I interviewed of the current graduates is expecting to work for URDT out in the district as what they call an epicenter manager. So these are jobs that are basically usually get paid about $5,000 a year. You live out in a rural district and your office is in the district, town office, essentially. So you're working with the elected officials, and you're working with the members of the community in an official capacity to help the community members articulate what it is they want the government to do for them, and to help make sure the government actually does do the things that, that they need, and to get the community members all engaged in doing the same kind of projects they were working on as students, whether it's road building, savings and loan, building a marketplace, building a new school, whatever it is that's needed in that area. So these epicenter managers work out in the field typically for 4 or 5 years. And there are now over 100 of them that have gone through that cycle. And you can see they're just lovely women. Many of them have kids, but they're posted out in a rural area. They have to, usually have a little farm on the side to make some extra money and feed their family. And their husbands usually come and live with them or visit them. So these are career women, but the career they've chosen is to work out in the rural communities. And they all get together and come back to URDT for lots of trainings and information sharing and so on. And the types of things, as I mentioned, that they do: schools, roads, marketplaces, farmers co-ops. There's a thing called pupil-managed school farms. A lot of the schools now have these new farms that are like the ones at the URDT girls' school. And they also, because they're trained in agriculture, they help any farmer do a better job with their livestock and their farm productivity. And of course, they work on sanitation, drinking water, latrines, and solar power. So the other thing that really struck me this time, and a lot of you longtime AFPF supporters have joined me in being concerned about Mulamo Musheshe is so brilliant and so creative and has created this incredible set of educational institutions and the structure. But, like the rest of us, he's no spring chicken. And at some point, he's going to retire. And so the question has always long been, well, what happens then? Who's going to run this place? And it became very obvious to me, and Musheshe made it clear, that these are the people who are going to run this place. This happens to be a group of Aru graduates, most of whom already have master's degrees. Many of them are working on their PhDs. All of them are working side by side with one of the current leaders of the Aru faculty and URDT staff. This woman, Josephine, is the executive assistant to Musheshe, and each of them is, and she's also, by the way, the acting human resources manager for the university. So she's basically learning how to run the place by doing it right next to Musheshe. And another one of these women is the assistant to the dean of students. Another one is the assistant to the registrar. Several of them are on the faculty. So they're all completely committed to this organization. So I think that was one of the most optimistic and promising things that I felt. And in one of our future webinars, I'm going to have them tell their stories to you so you can hear about their background and what they're doing and what their educational background is. So one of the things they need is support at university to get PhDs. We're trying to make sure they have enough money to be able to get doctorates so that they can serve on the faculty, for example, because you have to have a PhD to be on the faculty. So that's the university. And then the last organization I want to mention is the Vocational Institute, which was actually the very first educational institute that was started in 1987 when URDT was founded. And it teaches hundreds of trades, everything from motorcycle repair to brick making and architecture and farming, all kinds of organic farming, beekeeping, etc. And out of that institute have come all of these business people who have started their own little shops. And as Doug said, you drive around the countryside and there are all these purpose-built shops, whether it's Kagadi Metalworks or a restaurant or a carpentry shop or a bank, all started by graduates of the Vocational Institute. And what happened in 2000, just before COVID hit, was that URDT managed to get a grant, a $5 million grant from the MasterCard Foundation. And they were supposed to be one of several vocational institutes in Uganda, throughout the country of Uganda, that would together train 70,000 unemployed youth in some trades and help them become entrepreneurs. And because of COVID, it wasn't possible to do the project the way it was originally designed because all those vocational schools shut down. Nobody was running, there wasn't a place you could go to get an education. But Musheshe, in his brilliance, said, well, wait a minute, we have 540 graduates of our vocational institute, and they're all out working in the districts and, in farms and so on. So why don't we make them the teachers and have each of them teach students the trade they've already learned? And we will use our epicenter managers who are also out in the field to teach them the whole foundation course of how to create the life that you want to achieve for yourself. And that's what they did. And so basically, instead of this being spread out over a bunch of different vocational institutes, URDT ended up doing the entire program. And they actually completed a year early. So it was a 5-year program. In 5 years, they were supposed to train 70,000 men and women. And they did that in 4 years. So we're now in the 5th year of the project. And what they're doing now is working with all of the graduates who have not yet started their own businesses to help them become self-employed. I mean, the idea is really to teach these people to become entrepreneurs, not just help them get jobs. Teach them to be entrepreneurs and be able to train others. So
I grew up in a poor family, but they managed to take me to school. During my studies, I had the 2 visions: to become a soldier and to drive and ride vehicles. So when I was in S4 vacation, that's when I heard about Uganda Development and Training Institute. And I had to join this program. On 3rd of August, that's when I opened up my garage there. I really thank MasterCard Foundation because I had no any skill. But since I joined this institute, I got some skills which are now helping me to get a bright future.
So this educational ecosystem is really quite amazing. So to summarize, we've got the girls' school, we have the radio station, which we didn't talk much about, but spreads that both the girls' school students and the university students present on the radio station, and educational classes, and Musheshe speaks every Sunday. In fact, the local churches had to move the time of their services because so many people were listening to the the call-in radio show that Musheshe does every Sunday morning about how to improve your life. So that was kind of interesting. And then once you've graduated from the girls' school, you have the option to go to the university. Again, 30 students per year in each of the two programs, or you could go to the Vocational Institute, which it trains both men and women. And then out of the university, the graduates have the option of becoming epicenter managers, and they're now serving 24 different rural districts. And the URDT Institute graduates, there's over 524 little training centers now. So each of those entrepreneurs that they worked with during the Young Africa Works program have continued, and they've become really distributed parts of the URDT Institute, what they call training centers of excellence, and they're working with MasterCard to hopefully get another 5-year grant to continue expanding that program. So I think that's really an amazing set of accomplishments. And for those of you who've been with the organization for a long time, you probably remember that these things all happened in kind of a different order than we talked about, in terms of the Institute was first, then the organic demonstration farm, then the girls' school in 2000, the radio station in 2000, the university opened in 2006, and then the Epicenter Manager program started in 2010, and the MasterCard program in 2020. So, but it's all kind of become this amazing ecosystem. So the best way to invest in the future of Africa and our planet is definitely to help support it. Doug has an example of a great way to invest in this project.
What I had done with my family, and I have a very large family, Michigan and Florida, some in Maine, some in Virginia. I said, instead of a Christmas gift, which I don't need, there isn't anything I want or need. What I would like you to do is any money that you would have spent on me, please send me that money, because what I want to do is I want to be able to raise 1,000.
Thanks to all who participated today, and a special thanks to my predecessor, Martha Dolben, who served as AFPF board chair for more than 25 years.